Hello everybody.
Next up, as is now traditional at this time of the year, we journey up to Salford where Manchester United will be our hosts. Kick-off is at 7:45pm with TV coverage on ITV, so even those of you without Space TV should be able to get a look in. And as an added bonus, there'll be no Coronation Street that night, much to the relief of the intelligent human beings up and down the country. The tie will be settled on the night, with extra time and penalties available, should the scores be level at the appropriate time. So, Manchester United then. They're in a bit of form, which will please the current owners of the conglomerate as their share price creeps up for potential buyers. The leading contenders come from Qatar, who, having successfully convinced the rest of the world that thousands of deaths are a small price to pay to deflect attention from human rights abuses, have decided to go for broke and try for world approval by buying a club that is a byword for honesty and integrity. Also not. A far cry from the dealings of the Edwards family all those years ago. Or maybe not. Will be interesting to see how that all goes down with the United Arab Emirates, who pretty much own the rest of Greater Manchester. On the pitch, as I say, they've clicked into form. A dreadful start to the season saw them lose at home to Brighton and away at Brentford, after which it seemed to dawn on them that Ronaldo might be a bit more trouble than he's actually worth. He was used sparingly in the league, with 6 of his 10 appearances coming off the bench. He then turned up on a TV interview with Piers Morgan, earning an honourable draw in the who is the more arrogant and irritating vote, taking time to slag off his employers to the extent that he was let go by the club with a size 9 boot up his backside. Ronaldo's footballing priorities were laid bare by his acceptance of a reported £175 million contract to play in Saudi Arabia, though it isn't recorded whether or not he waxed lyrical over his childhood memories of following Al Nassr. They've lost just the 4 times in the league this season, away defeats at Villa and Arsenal being added to those in the first couple of weeks in the season. European qualification was assured at the weekend with the 2-0 defeat of Newcastle in the League Cup final. Though sitting as they do in 3rd place, the precise flavour of their continental journey next season has yet to be decided. Daisy informed me that they were active in the loan market during January. Goalkeeping cover was brought in from Crystal Palace in the form of Jack Butland, with them having sent Newcastle keeper Martin Dubravka back to Tyneside. Interestingly, Dubravka might get one of the spare winners' medals from Sunday's League Cup win, despite technically being on the losing side, albeit cup-tied. Apparently, the winning side get 30 medals to distribute amongst the squad, and Manchester United only used 27 players during their run. All of which makes you a bit nostalgic for the days when you had to actually play or be sub in the cup final to score a medal. John Terry has much to answer for, in so many ways. Wout Weghorst, who has 19 Dutch caps, arrived on loan from Burnley. I say Burnley. The player was in fact playing his trade over in Turkey with Besiktas. Besiktas were a bit cheesed off by all accounts, though their cheesed-offedness was alleviated somewhat by Burnley splitting the loan fee with them. The final loan signing was much-capped Austrian midfielder Marcel Sabitzer, whose surname always makes me want to sing One for the Money whenever it's mentioned on the radio. I don't know why this surprised me, but he is apparently the first Austrian player to represent Manchester United. On the injury front, they'll be without Van der Beek and Eriksen, who have long-term issues. There are doubts over Shaw, Fred and Martial, whilst the situation regarding the now acquitted Mason Greenwood remains a bit unclear, with the club continuing to weigh up all its options by all accounts. Let's move on, shall we, to the wild and wacky world of association football. And there was at last some good news for Spurs fans as it was announced that a karting track is to be built underneath their stadium. Be nice to see the place used for something useful. Look out for their press officer's announcement to the effect that Harry Kane has now broken the lap record. Meanwhile, there's been trouble at Le Mille across the channel, where Noël Le Graët, president of the French FA, has resigned after a damning report into the running of the FFF. And it said that his behavioural excesses were incompatible with the carrying out of his functions, only in French. The report followed numerous accusations of bullying and sexual harassment, which the Federation dismissed as exaggerated bad-mouthing. Good to see them taking things so seriously, isn't it? Let's move on to us. Well, what a difference a little bit of confidence makes, eh? A Apparently, the players held a meeting or two to sort a few things out, and it seems to have worked. We dominated this one, although with the first goal not coming until after the 70th minute, those of us of a certain age and with memories of so many matches that ended up 1-0 to our opponents with them scoring from their only chance, it was a little bit worrying. Thankfully, we have in Danny Ings a finisher. His first goal was a superbly improvised finish, and the second was the sort of ugly finish that, well, all good strikers manage when required. Only a first-half attack of the Ian Dowie 50p head virus saw Ings finish up without the hat-trick that he actually probably merited. As for Forest, their match could be summed up by the one spell of possession they had in the first half. With the ball deep in our territory on their right-hand side, the player in possession looked up and was greeted by the sight of 5 or 6 of his teammates, all pointing back to the halfway line as a suggested destination for the ball, rather than anyone in an advanced position. No wonder most of them left at 2-0, although I suppose they might have wanted a good spot for the ABBA thing, which an extraordinary number of them seemed to head for at full time. Imagine that, losing 4-0 and then having to endure 2 hours of ABBA. Still, musical taste doesn't seem to be a priority up there, with their main song being based on ultimately the worst thing that Paul McCartney ever wrote. And yes, I am including the frog chorus in that. On the injury front, Fabianski is going to miss this one. He'll be out for a good while yet, having fractured his eye socket from a Felipe challenge that I'm not entirely convinced was totally accidental. Felipe has got previous in that respect. Soufal's been carrying a heel injury, possibly as a continuation of the problems he suffered from that disgusting challenge on him up at Leeds, whilst Zuma and Cornet are back in training, whilst I wouldn't really expect them to be risked. Prediction? Well, cup ties being what they are these days, you never know what sort of team will be put out by either side, so making a judgment call is pretty difficult. We will, of course, have the traditional 12 men to play against, with referees being reluctant to give any decision that might anger the home side. That might have lessened a little bit since the tax dodger Ferguson retired, but getting the rub of the green up there is dependent on getting an honest and competent set of match officials, qualities that have never been uppermost in PGMOL's recruitment priorities. Bearing that in mind and factoring in the possibility that this may be lower down the list of priorities for management than perhaps it ought to be, I can see us losing out, albeit in a much tighter match than many might think. So the £2.50 that I was going to spend on an officially licensed Ronaldo Saudi Player of the Month February 2023 mug will instead be spent on a wager at Winston the Turf Accountants on a home win. I think we'll call it 2-1 after extra time, if I may, please, Mr. Winston. Enjoy the game.
We're here in the offices of a Late Late Show with the host of a Late Late Show, James Corden.
Hi.
Big West Ham fan.
Yes. And big knees up Mother Brown, man.
Yeah.
Get on the forum at kumb.com. Come on, you irons.